Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen,
Hi, everybody.
a very good afternoon and a warm welcome to this special webinar by Great Place to Work. Thanks for joining in from all over the country and on a Wednesday afternoon. My name is Basuri Datta and I will be your host and the moderator for today's webinar. Was there ever a time when we would have thought that a time will come when organizations would have to make an effort to get their people to live the culture without living in it? Some of the things we took for granted all these years, water cooler conversations, 10-minute quick huddles at a moment's notice, lunchroom conversations, floor walks by leaders to see if all their people, together and to get a sense whether their energy levels were high among employees, may not be the same. All of these may not be the same anymore. Moreover, some of our newer and younger colleagues may not have experienced or may not experience what's called the office vibe in full measure. Well, hybrid working is here and some say it's here for good. So let us examine the question, how to build and preserve workplace cultures in the era of a hybrid workforce. To discuss this topic, we have a very eminent and distinguished panel of experts. Each one of them is not only a seasoned practitioner, but also a leader in the function of people and culture in their respective organizations. Once I introduce our esteemed panelists, we will dive straight into the conversation. And while the conversation is on, I urge you all to start sending us your questions for the panelists, even as they occur to you through a Q&A tab that you all will see on your screens. Wherever there are suitable opportunities, I will weave in those questions into the conversation. And of course, towards the end of the session, I would put across to our panelists some of the unique questions that we may have got from you all. And so now introducing our esteemed panel for today, we have Mr. B.S. Nanjappa, who's the Senior Vice President and Group Head Employee Relations and Head HR for the regions of APAC and LATAM and all of the enabler functions at Infosys. He is a seasoned professional in a career spanning over 19 years, from redefining talent strategy to suit the needs of a blended workforce to championing innovation at the as the future of work. Nanjappa has been consistently recognized as an exceptional outcome-driven leader and has been the recipient of numerous external and internal awards. At Infosys, being a 225,000 strong global enterprise, I think Nanjappa surely is one man who knows a thing or two about how to make an elephant dance. We also have with us Mr. Milind Apte, who is the Senior Vice President, Human Resources at CEAT Tires, an RPG Group company. Milind is a senior HR and people management professional for over 23 years of robust and value-driven experience in spearheading entire organizational transformation journey. He holds a verifiable record of success in identifying business problems, formulating tactical plans, and initiating change, meticulously implementing effective HR programs and managing modern HR systems in diverse and cross-cultural environments. Our third guest for today is Mr. Abhishek Kumar. Abhishek leads the people function at Ericsson Global Services Centers, spread across India, Romania, China, and Mexico, with a large employee base of a very diverse demographic groups. He has led people function across various industries like FMCG, manufacturing, ITES, media, telecom, power, and information and communication in a career spanning over 19 years. Gentlemen, welcome to this panel discussion and thanks for being a part of this. My first question is to you, Nanjappa. Nanjappa, what has changed over the last 2 years as far as a day in the life of an Infosian is concerned. So please paint a picture for us, and also, have the rules of the game really changed as far as workplace culture is concerned? And if they have changed, how so?
Thanks, Basari, for having me over. And I never let go of an opportunity to collaborate and share. Although I'd have loved our in-person panel. That's something that gives me great vibes. But I'm also smiling because I'm in the office, and it feels deja vu. We've been coming to office for a while now, but nothing better than connecting with your colleagues and understanding them better. They say, the more things change, more they remain the same. There are parts where things have remained the same, possibly strengthened. There are parts which have been completely irrelevant and out of the window, and there are very new things that we've been forced to think about. In a way, this is going to be the greatest change management exercise, at least in our lifetimes. Going from office to home was easier, I'm thinking, than the other way around, and we'll all live and learn every single day. Just to give you in a nutshell, our experience is based on 3 tenets: the employee experience, the physical experience, the digital experience, and the emotional experience. Pre-COVID, the physical experience part drove the entire experience space, in the sense that we operated out of large campuses. People came into work 5 days a week. While there was flexibility on all of that, most things, people came together, ideated, worked, and went back home. And then it was supported by the culture of the organization, which is in the form of the emotional experience, and of course digital, because technology drove many of those things. So in some way, we had shaped this whole thing in the three paradigms. Now, while we continue to have those 3 paradigms, it's just that the digital experience is driving the agenda. Whether it's play, whether it's work, whether it's engagement, whether it's learning, all of that has been driven by the digital experience and supported by the physical and the emotional things. So the physical experience is largely about workplace, but for different reasons. Of course, culturally, it's more a hybrid thing. But just to sum it up, fundamentally the difference is that the initial part of it was physical. Now it's been driven by digital. And that's, I think, is the greatest difference that we're seeing. Just to give you an example, a couple of months ago, so we have a training center in Mysore. We house about 12,000 to 14,000 employees who join straight out of college. They train, and then they are at different locations. When COVID happened, it went completely online. And now we're back. I was talking to a group of 1,000 people a couple of months ago, and we were also onboarding 1,000 people online. And that, I think, is the greatest example of a difference that we are seeing. So earlier it was offline, then we went online, and now we're seeing 1,000 people in person onboarding and 1,000 person at the same time offline online onboarding. So that is a great example of how times are going to come. The last thing I want to close with is the second biggest difference that organizations will see is that culture will not be any more driven from the top or from the center. It'll be driven from grounds up. Teams will define the culture of organizations. What organizations will have to start doing is the quality of experience between teams. Teams will contain groups of 200, 300 people across borders, across groups, and they will work, support each other. And those teams and the experience that organization gives to these teams will pretty much define the culture of organization. So it's going to be grounds up for the very first time, in my view.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you so much. Milind, my next question is to you. Is there such a thing as a hybrid workforce in the manufacturing sector? Can this concern a critical mass of your people working in a manufacturing setup or a manufacturing enterprise? Because intuitively one would think that, this is not something that can be really done in a manufacturing setup. So would like to understand from you.
No, thank you so much, Basuri, and thank you so much for inviting me over. About 2.5 years back, this question would have been very relevant because if people spoke of flexibility, people looked at you as if you don't understand the business at all. And they would say, in a brick and mortar setup, in a manufacturing setup, can you even think of a hybrid? Thankfully, in RPG, in CEAT, we launched 5-day week work in manufacturing much before even COVID happened. But in true sense, I think COVID has helped us to break barriers. So if you look at, for example, and I'm giving extreme example of a manufacturing supervisor on the floor. Now he's expected to be on the floor every day and get the work done. Today, we have been able to extend even a reasonable flexibility to even the shop floor manufacturing supervisor, right? So I think the principle which we have given is very simple. If we could manage things during COVID times when we were not expected to be on the floor, I think we can really manage it. And we are trying to really anchor the same principle, and obviously being very sensitive to the work demands. We are trying to bring in a little variation in the degree of flexibility, but intrinsically moving in a direction where every employee gets the benefit of flexible work and hybrid work. So I think directionally, which is where we are headed. And what little I understand from some other manufacturing organizations also, I think people have started making an effort. So compared to a complete no that manufacturing, there can't be any flexibility, I see a lot of appreciation towards offering that flexibility. And if I bring in one more example, let's say we have a global R&D center in Halol, in Baroda. Now you can't ideally work outside of that R&D center, and you can't do anything from home. But I think this has forced us to innovate and figure out patterns of working where we can still allow people to work from home. So even if somebody is in R&D technology center, I think there is reasonable flexibility we have been able to bring on. So sense is, I think people are getting more and more sensitive, and obviously we are very sensitive.
Interesting. Abhishek, your Apex leader last year very famously said to the people in the organization that we at Ericsson Global Services are responsible for monitoring the lifelines of people around the world. While the spirit of this is really laudable, how has hybrid working unfolded in a company like yours, an industry like yours, which is essentially a GIC, Global In-House Center?
Thanks, Basri, and thanks for inviting. I think it's a very pertinent question, it's a brilliant question to ask. I think if you have to look back the whole perspective, we'll have to go back in March 2020. Nobody knew. I think this kind of situation came in after 100 years. Nobody was there, And being in a telecom sector, I think, lifeline, telecommunication is a lifeline of everything. So we went into that particular thing, and the onus was there on us that the communication, the show must go on. And then the second part was the employee well-being, the safety per se. But we were very clear that the employee would be the center of it, and then how we can stitch a well-being story so that our deliverables, our productivity do not impact. So what we did, it was a collation of everything, and then deriving the complete the support in terms of the three pillars, what I would say: the employee well-being, the mental well-being, the financial well-being, the physical well-being, and the emotional well-being, because that was very necessary if you have to run the whole show together per se. So few of the policies changes, the guidelines, support, everything was given to them. And then we went into a very, and this was the first phase, Basri. I think by December 2020, we believe that, okay, we have known COVID. We have been able to, tame COVID kind of thing. And this is going to continue till the time we get a vaccine. Nobody knew what came in second wave, 2021. It was painful, crude. And the whole focus was, apart from delivering the business and the telecommunication continuity per se, we regrouped all together. And then, greater focus was there that how to save lives. So initially, when 2020 happened, we segregated the team that few would be doing the essential services, because That is, you need to do that. I mean, systems and tools were not there. It was only there in the offices per se. But in 2021, we evolved. We took the help of digital, journey, what Najampa also talked about it, and every company did it. I think we created that BCP, and 2021 became a very different story. And well-being created. I mean, we created a lot of, because the family was, was being affected. Employees were there to as a caregiver kind of thing. So it was an end-to-end solution for that. But if I have to look back, I mean, somewhere, Basri, everybody keeps on talking about that. In HR, we do not quantify our efforts. I'll try to, go back to March 2020, and we do employee engagement survey beside GPTW, Basri, twice a year, And then we realized that the March 20, April, May, what we did, our engagement score remains same as in today, Basri. So somewhere it was a very holistic approach what we had taken, with people, employee at the center of focus, and then being a industry which everybody has got you do have a business deliverable, you do have a client expectation. But yes, we stitch the story together so that right now, if employees are giving this kind of feedback, and Basri, we are in top 50 of great places to work. I think it's no mean joke, because 20,000 odd people in India per se. But yes, I think everybody has gone through a journey per se, but we were very clear, and thanks to the managers and the leaders, it's not only limited to HR function, it's completely led by the manager per se. And I think somewhere they played a big role, and the kind of support, the arsenal, the tools, what we gave to them to reach out to the last mile was a clincher. So that much I can say.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Nanjappa, I circle back to you. From an outsider's perspective, if there is one industry that was expected to take to hybrid working like fish to water, it was the IT industry, really. Everybody thinks that, yeah. But I know that things are not as easy as they seem from the outside. So on top of that, for everything that you do, you have the complexity of scale to deal with, right? So please share with our audience, how has Infosys approached this entire paradigm of hybrid working? That will be good to know.
Yeah, so I don't know if everyone's figured this out. The good part is, like I said, we're still living and learning. I think most companies pre-COVID would have operated out of maybe, say, in the Indian context, maybe about 10, 12, 15 cities. And the transition from that happened to maybe about 2,000 odd cities or towns where you're distributed workforce. And then, and now organizations are possibly looking to have a mix of those locations plus the remote. So we may eventually go to 300 to 500 cities. And some of this is completely unheard of if we had spoken about this pre-pandemic. So while some of these things are happening, the model we're trying to work on is the workforce and the workplace realm. Just from a work point of view, organizations are going to see massive transformation in the workflow itself and the work redesign aspect of it. Gig working will come into play. There's already a lot of stuff around this because flexibility is a big part of the whole thing. It's a new work model, so people will be okay with. Modular work is another big area which will take precedence under the work part. The second important thing under work would be mobility. Mobility is no more about moving locations. People can look at careers across locations, sitting from the same place. So mobility, I think, will be a key driver as well. So that's on the work front. On the workplace front, workplace initially was about just on-site and offshore. Now it's going to be about from 6 different places. There's on-site workplace, there's on-site home, on-site client, there's offshore client, offshore home, and offshore office. So it has become that much more complex. And workplace itself is going to be used for different things. And I see it around, and people come to meet each other, team huddles, innovation. and just getting together, because all of those 24 months of losing social capital, and especially for new joins, it's very important to integrate them into the culture of organization. So workplace itself will be looked at differently, but as we go, I think that will fine tune itself. And the third is about the workforce. There will be three groups of people as we think. One was completely remote. One group which will be flexi workers who will oscillate between work and home at 20 to 80% of the time, and there will be office goers who will work 5 days a week from a role point of view or client or any other. And the greatest challenge will be to have policies, processes, and experiences equal for all these three groups of employees. Earlier, the whole narrative was about having 5 generations in the workplace. Now, I think that is completely passé. Now it's going to be about these three groups of people and how we will all strive towards making the experience, the process, and the policies equal to all of them. I mean, if you just take an example of, say, a simple thing like a leave policy. A leave policy could actually be different for different groups of people. For the office goer, it'll be about not coming to work. For the flexi worker, it might be about not working from somewhere, and for the person who's remote, it'll mean very different. So I'm just giving you an example of that. So we will all have to strive towards making the equality of experience policy and process for these three groups. But yeah, like I said, I don't think everyone's figured this out as we go along. The focus will be different for different geographies because the behaviors are different, the legislations are different, clients are looking at it differently. So some of these drivers will also help us define and articulate the hybrid workplace.
Wow, delivering an equitable experience. Yeah, that's interesting. Milind, in the last 2 years, we have, somewhat learned to conduct work and life through screens. And, we have been in the cusp of hybrid working and hybrid workforce, which is finally now here. It is here for us. But we also hear about the downside of this way of working from some quarters. We hear often that fairness is something that gets compromised. It's a easy, casualty in a hybrid workplace. Teams that come to work more often form cliques, and the ones operating virtually or remotely really feel excluded at times. Do you see this as a risk to culture building, sustaining a certain kind of culture? And what are some of the strategies you are adopting to ensure that fairness quotient of the organization does not get compromised in a major way? Yeah.
No, great question. Absolutely. And this is what I'm sure every organization has battled through. So clearly, I think people who come out to work, and when people are in teams, and I call it, you have sutta gangs and you have cutting chai gangs, and the kind of camaraderie which you are able to build is very different compared to what you do when you are online and operating through a screen. So we did face this challenge, but I think our understanding was very simple, that the entire engagement model is changing. And the way you engaged people and made them feel a part of the larger organization also is undergoing huge change. So we relied on 2-3 big things. So first is communication, and the group of people who are working remotely, how do we over communicate with them? Because their sense of inclusivity is directly linked with your direct communication with them, right? Compared to a group or addressing a team, etc. Second, we made sure we go completely out of the way and establish connection with them. And because they are operating from home most of the time, I think connection is not only with the employee, but the larger ecosystem of the employee, which is the employee family and the extended family as well. And third, I think we made sure that the core HR processes and the touch points are not compromised. So for example, if it is a half-yearly performance appraisal or a career conversation, I think there was a special emphasis on making sure that these touch points, as Nanjappa rightly said, we are able to turn them around into experiences. And the last one, but the big one, was we looked at this entire element beyond work. And we necessarily looked at the larger health and wellness of the family, because it wasn't only joy staying at home, it also caused a lot of ruptures over a period of time, and it caused a lot of disharmony in the larger family, right? So it wasn't necessarily happy experience. Everybody suffered, and we made sure that through chief fitness officer, which we have on board, and multiple other physical fitness, mental fitness related direct offerings, I think we reached out to families, extended families, counseling and whatnot. So I think we expanded our entire thought of Connect much beyond the standard process linked Connect, and made sure that from a core people process standpoint, they don't feel insecure at any point in time, right? So office goers wasn't a problem, but I think a lot of hard work, special HR teams to take care of people who are working from home, at regular intervals, getting them together, and there is a very interesting concept we launched called Pulse, and Pulse is practically like understanding the pulse of the human being, right? And we trained our leaders, 6 to 7 employees were assigned to each leader, and there was a frequency at which the leader was supposed to speak with the employees, and they were trained to understand the pain points of the employees. So how do we really understand pain points? How do we really understand pain points of the larger ecosystem? What kind of support the ecosystem requires? Apart from, as Nanjappa rightly said, making sure that the experiences on core people practices aren't diluted. I think that's how we made sure that the inclusivity remained fairly strong through this period. And now it has become, I would say, part and parcel of the ecosystem.
Wow. That's really good to hear. Wonderful. Abhishek, while I understand that at Ericsson Global Services, you have taken a more role-based approach in making the hybrid model work, how do you propose to balance empathy and care by the organization on the one hand and employee accountability on the other? Yeah. Are there some new team agreements, etc., that you foresee where leaders would need to make it very, very clear, as to why a person should be coming to work a few days or a few times a week, and how can it be made worth it for the employee? And can this be done by defining when, why, and how by the leaders very, very clearly? So are there some new team agreements, team norms, etc., that you are, since you have taken a role-based approach to this?
So, Basri, I think again, going back to 2022, I think empathy and care was the center of it.
Yeah.
In fact, we keep on talking about hybrid, non-hybrid, and then bigger challenges for companies across the board is another major challenge is base location and remote location. So, there are, offices, we do have 6 base offices, but people have gone to 1,000 cities, So even in 2022, as a HR function, we did not police it. It was between the manager and the employee to decide upon where they want to give. Yes, what we created was a remote work guideline kind of thing to streamline the whole process, because there were so many other elements to be taken care of. Now, coming back to now 2 years down the line or 2.5 years down the line, naturally, the way forward would be that given a chance, there would be 3 elements which will be determined. I'm not talking about, because here technically that is the future. I look forward to it. It will be a role-based approach. That's the way forward per se. But 3 elements would be a deciding factor. One will be the internal. One would be the role, the nature of the role. Whether process, system, tools can be, whether that role can be done remotely or not, kind of thing. What is the demand in case of urgency, whether that role can be done in a remote location. So that's the nature of the role. Second criteria would be the external factor. The second would be the customer and the regulatory authority, because we work in a regulated environment per se. And the client requirement is also very important, because many a times few discussion, brainstorming needs to be done. The demand of the client is there on that account. And the third one would be definitely the people one, the people one, whether, in terms of cultural integration, socialization, and the need of socialization. Another thing, I think everybody took it, Basri, that if somebody is working remotely, that means the well-being is taken care of. We put up a very different lens. We just wanted to inquire from the employees that if you are going to a hinterland, whether that well-being, health, mental, every aspect is being taken care of. So looking forward, I mean, if I have to look at few of the norms would be there from the leaders which are coming in. Everybody is experimenting, and I think whenever we are talking about on our part, and then I mean we are from the HR function, we are doing our iConnect kind of thing. Managers and leaders, they are doing the FGDs to formulate a win-win norm. It is a very, I mean, easy to do a one-way thing, but I think, I mean, 2.5 years, what we have been looking at it, the overall productivity has hardly been impacted per se. Yes, few of the clients' demands comes in, that is also a pertinent fact on that. But few norms would be there, but it will be with a very consultative approach. It has to be a win-win for the manager and the employee per se, because culturally, if you have to look at it, you need to be very clear that what kind of messaging what we are doing, and which should be very pertinent. I think it cannot be it could be a pragmatic one, wherein the needs of both the parties are taken care of, and where as an HR will be playing a big catalyst role, giving that perspective to both the sides, that these are the pros, these are the cons, but nowhere we want to police it. It has to evolve with time kind of thing, and might be depending upon the need, we'll be creating necessary tools which can be a great means for employee to come back or do a role based, but keep on contributing to the organization. That remains the bottom line.
Interesting. Nanjappa, circling back to you, there is research and enough empirical data that shows that today employees are more likely to prioritize their health and wellness over work than they did before the pandemic. So if we were to compare the two sets of timelines. So at Infosys, guarding against the always on culture, you're always available, always on, always online, logged in. How are you ensuring that flexibility that comes with this hybrid kind of working does not mean always on for employees? Also, what are some of the strategies that you have to ensure the much required intentionality on part of people leaders, whether it's creating a leveling environment for our people, their psychological safety or their health and wellness? And we know that there is a very strong, program that multiple programs that you are running at Infosys. So it'll be great if you can share some of those with us.
Thanks. And it's a very pertinent subject.
Yes.
So over the last 2 decades, we have focused on the wellness initiatives and made it part of the culture really. And I think it came handy in situations like this. And organizations will have to invest in such an initiative or embed it into the culture. Otherwise, I mean, there will be a situation like this which we could leverage the brands. Now, internally, we've created this brand, like I said, over 20 years, and hence has become a household name. When we did some sort of voting, we found that this brand was the #1 brand as recognized by the employees themselves. The journey was about going from an employer brand to making it an employee brand. I think that, and once it becomes, once there's mass appeal and once people start seeing the value of it, it eventually becomes that brand. We have created some sort of a concentric circle. At the heart of the concentric circle is the employee, and we want to make sure that everything that we do is relevant to him or her. At the first concentric circle is what we call self-help. Just like in the airplane, when there's turbulence, you have to wear your oxygen mask first. We are enabling a lot of self-help tools and making sure employees take as much responsibility of their wellness as much as the organization. I think that's a fundamental shift that we've made, because you have to be responsible for your own, and the organization will do everything to make sure we enable you with tools and techniques for you to help yourself. And that's the step number one. And that's the first, and that's called the self-help concentric circle. The second one is the communities that you belong to, which is the micro environment that you belong to. And the micro environment means the communities, your hobby clubs, your work teams, your manager, and your best friend at work. These are the 5 elements of your micro environment which will come to your rescue, because the next step for you to deal and to be resilient is to look up to your teams, your manager, your best friend at work, your communities, and of course your hobby clubs. And this has made a big difference because people are comfortable digging into this group, and hence making them more resilient. And the organization enables that whole platform of the micro environment. The last one is the macro environment, which is the organization, which is creating policies, taking feedback throughout, making changes, outcome driven, and of course leadership sponsorship. So the third circle is the macro environment. Most organizations get stuck in only the macro environment, and that's how organizations start their journey on wellness, where there are a whole sort of things that are defined centrally and they are thrown at people, which may not be the case. And eventually, I think the evolution happens. Then you go to your micro environment, and then eventually go into self-help. And all these 3 things are important if you have to create a structure and a culture of wellness. And that's what we've tried to do. And like I said, we peppered that with a lot of programs over time, made it segments, and of course, use technology to personalize it. We have some way to go in my view, but we are on our way.
Wonderful. Are there some hacks to steer clear of the always on culture? So that we don't lapse into that?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, of course, enablement of line managers. I think we've done a whole host of things, and role modeling. So we've, even within the enablement of line managers, we've kind of picked the role models and tried to showcase them. And have also looked at giving data to people to say how some teams are doing better than the others in the same environment. And so enabling of managers has been one big part. Showing data has been another big part. Third is, of course, we want to stay clear of giving central mandates. I think that's something we don't want to do. All of this have to be a lot more, for it to last the test of time, it will have to be a lot more empowering. And that's what we've tried to do, really. And of course, there are 3 or 4 hacks in terms of how to, 3 or 4 nudges in terms of at a team level, how some of these things can be done, incentivizing behavior and all of those things. I think we have some way to go, and most organizations have some way to go, but we've started well. And we believe having a hybrid, getting people back to campuses for huddles, and all of those also help in the new scheme of things. So yeah, maybe over. And I think some of this will take time in terms of settling this down. Maybe in 6 months or 9 months, if you have a conversation, I'll be able to give you better info on how this whole thing is settled down in the new scheme of things.
Certainly. Milind, in the previous segment, you did touch upon this briefly, but the question that I'm going to ask you. It is true that as organizations, we have lost some ground when it comes to social capital, and there is research on this that shows that. When we compare it with pre-pandemic times, we have lost some ground in terms of social capital. How to make up for the lost social capital and rebuild some of that in a hybrid world of work? Your thoughts on that, Milind, because we know that RPG, as a group, is known for the kind of social capital it has been able to build over the years now. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if I just give an example, there is this Boomerang Club. And when our chairman calls for a get-together of the Boomerang Club, you will be astonished to see the number of people who turn around and the number of people who attend. So obviously RPG is known for that, but the fact remains that it was our strength, it continues to be our strength, but in today's day and age, while it remains our strength, it has the externalities are having its impact on the business as well. So we always thought that the social strength which we have, social capital strength which we have, is making sure good people are sensing a larger connect with the purpose, with the culture, and we are helping them to build their character in the organization. So it's just not the run towards promotions and higher compensation, but I think it's a run where I'm truly trying to grow myself from within and build my character. But it has been impacted with a little attrition, I think, which is above normal and average. So obviously the challenge remains in terms of as you induct more and more newer people, newer employees on board, and with hybrid workplace, many people being remotely available, how do you bring that sensitivity around what we stand for as RPG and make sure that we remain a very, very strong social capital, right? So what we have evolved is something called RPG way of hiring or a C8 way of hiring, C8 way of induction. And through this entire process, you will see that culture fit is our strongest element when we look at hiring somebody on board. Similarly, in the entire induction process, we would be amongst very few companies which has 60-day induction program, right? And we are in no rush to place the individual in the role. The whole idea is to make sure individual understands C8 way of working and not be in a rush to bring his or her experiences on board. Because I think they have the power of destroying the social fabric over a period of time. But at the same time, what's becoming very important for us is the strength of people practices. While we bank on them, I think we have looked at some of them and how do we use them to actually strengthen our social capital overall. So coaching and mentoring, for example, people are really, really looking forward to having this very insightful and meaningful conversations with people who are learned, people who don't bring their authority, their experience with every sentence, right? They anchor the conversations. They want to listen to you, etc. And on the other hand, we have also looked at understanding the ask of this generation, younger generation. So it's not only about what we believed is working. I think it's also understanding what people are looking forward to. So a lot of empowerment, flexibility, convenience, and which is age agnostic. So gone are the days where I say I'm 15-year experienced, etc. I think 2-year experienced guy also feels he's very competent and looks forward to that kind of empowerment. So how do we bring the elements of empowerment, flexibility, and convenience in our entire social system and make our people processes transform? Absolutely, and which is what we have done. Being a manufacturing company, we are speaking of agile teams. Being a manufacturing organization, we have flattened our org structure and today looking at complete empowered model where vouchers don't go through loads of bureaucracy. And the entire sense of progression has been fastened significantly. And the last, we are no more looking at somebody joining and retiring in RPG. I think the big shift also from a social capital standpoint is till such time you are here, I think let's create value for each other and make sure that we enjoy our association. So rather than quitting RPG because you are not enjoying, you rather enjoy, make your choices beyond a point, and we make sure that the pull remains extremely strong over a period of time. So against loyalty, value creation, and the fabric acknowledging the ask of younger generation is what we have absolutely done to keep the social quotient strong.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Abhishek, in a hybrid workplace, how do you propose to create a connection with the company's purpose? Some time back, a young and a relatively new employee in a large organization made a very profound observation. He said, how can I live the culture when I don't live in the culture? So your kind of reaction on that.
Basri, for me, I think culture has got two elements. One is the real one, and second one is the perceived one. Okay. And generally what we do intervention for culture, it becomes a 5,000 feet kind of intervention. And when we are looking at the younger generation, and I think, and then whenever you are doing any intervention, empirical data doesn't lie. Okay. So I have been talking about, we keep on doing twice a year, the engagement survey and all. And then the general perception was that the younger generation, the Gen Z and the millennials, they'd be talking about 5 days work from home kind of thing because they want a balance. But the empirical data shows that majority of them, they wanted only 1 to 2 days of work from home. Somewhere that, connection for the culture piece was social socialization with the larger team was very much pertinent with them. Okay. So for us, I think what we are having a two-pronged approach, a digital intervention, and the second one is the human face-to-face connect. So it has been left to the manager and the younger generation. What do you want to do? From our side, we are very clear that we have been doing a digital induction course also, but now we are also inviting people, younger generation, the new joiners, not only the new joiners, the lateral ones. If you want to be part of the physical induction, you are more than welcome to do that. So somewhere we need to think the way we should be thinking from their lenses. So when we are going to integrate both the purpose and what the new or young generation wants, I think we should be going to them that please suggest what do you want to do. We are pretty much open on that. We don't want to police, neither the managers want to police, but yes, whatever empirical data, we should not be doing any intervention wherein we are talking about that in these segments. I think we should be taking those, the small steps, the basics right, which will make an impact in the lives of younger generation, because that is the way forward. Nobody is looking for a long-term solution per se, but the culture will be eventually the winner in retaining and engaging with the larger audience, be it of anything. But yes, for a younger generation, it is very important that we do the basics correct with them and we see the whole thing from their lenses.
Interesting. And even as we are having this conversation, a lot of questions are coming in from our participants. But I'll ask some of them that, and we've clustered together seemingly common themes. But one question that I had, which is also being asked by many of our participants, and this is a common question. I think all three of you, we would like to hear your thoughts on this. As a practitioner and a people leader, in a people function, how do you see the future of the world of work really unfold? So what's the future of work? And these days you see this, so many articles on this, but your take as someone who's been in the profession for long, what do you predict? How is this going to unfold? Maybe Nanjappa, we could start with you.
Yeah, sure. There's a quote on my door. It's been there for many years now. It says the best way to predict the future is to invent it.
Okay.
Good one. So I think, yeah. So it's been there for a while now, and I think it's pretty apt at this point in time. No one really knows how this is going to unfold. Everything is changing so quickly. There's regulatory, there is human behavior. The whole environment itself is different from a pandemic point of view. But I'll still give it a shot. I think from a talent point of view, I think the first one will definitely be skills. Skills are going to be the new currency, the new experience, and people will be badged based on the depth and the realm of skills that they bring to the table. Learnability will be a key quotient in that. So I think that's number one. The second will definitely be communities. Organizations will live in communities for psychological safety, for support, for work, and for interest. I think communities will play a very, very big role in the future of work. Can you hear me? Hello?
I think Basuri has...
Yeah, I think Basuri is off.
Yes.
We'll wait for her.
Yeah, she's back.
Okay. So, Basuri, I think you were back. Okay. You were off. So
I think it was our internet which was a little patchy. Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah,
no
you
worries.
should continue. Nanjappa, please continue.
No worries. I was just thinking that at some point we'll have to make this in person, because that's where this whole thing is real. Yeah. So I was talking about a few things. First, of course, I spoke about the skills part. and the learnability connected to that. I think that will be a big part of the future of work. Second, of course, is communities. Organizations will live in communities and will look for psychological safety for work interests and support groups, and that will play a big role in creating the culture of organizations. So communities is definitely one of it. Third, my personal favorite is co-creation, co-creating with employees, constantly being in touch with them and making sure creating things which are important to them with their ownership and accountability. I think there's a sense of cultural accountability, but I think that will happen through co-creation. I think that will be the third thing in my view, which will be super important. Fourth, I think, will be the productivity part. Why I say productivity is because productivity, flexibility actually will be fueled by productivity. So if we are able to articulate productivity, then the flexibility will actually be empowered through that. And I think that's what matters. Flexibility on its own doesn't make any sense. And hence these are two, and these can't be decoupled at all. And if you can figure out a connection, it will, like I said, go through the test of time. And many more like digital and all of that, but I won't go to that. So these are the four things that I want to stick to. And most importantly, organizations will have to be agile to change and iterate their decisions and actions as we go along. I think making decisions or taking decisions are all going to be point in time, and the resilient organizations will be the ones who will be quick to make changes as they go along. I think that will be critical to the future of work, because of the changing dynamics in the environment. That will be critical for organizations to succeed.
Thanks. Milind,
Yeah.
your take on the future.
So I call this generation YOLO, and the workforce which is coming is you only live once. Yeah. So the first thing which we have to keep in mind is 21 things I want to do before I die kind of mindset, and which is where work is just part of my life, one part of my life, and I have many other parts of my life. So how do we create a workplace which acknowledges the fact that no more I want to work 12 hours, 14 hours or 16 hours. I think I want to bring in a lot of value. So how do you create a workplace which is filled with a lot of flexibility, with a sense of value creation, without necessarily having very long-term commitment? I think is one sense I get. Second, I also see this young workforce wanting to have a direct connect with purpose. So they want to really know what difference they are making as an employee to the larger purpose of the organization, or as Nanjappa rightly said, the communities, the society at large. So how do we bring in that purpose? I think that will become an integral part. Third is a lot of convenience. They are looking forward to a lot of convenience. And the standard modules, standard frameworks, standard policies and rules and regulations aren't going to help. And which is where we as organizations will need to be very, very dynamic and agile. I don't think one rule fits all is going to help going forward. So how do we provide more and more convenience and look forward to more value extraction, I think would become an integral part. And last is flexibility. So while we are talking of hybrid, I think hybrid in any format, it's not only about 3 days to work and 4 days at home. I think any format of hybrid is absolutely acceptable till such time together we are creating that larger sense for the business. I think these are 3-4 areas which at least we are, I think all the work we have done very recently, this is what I think we are sensing, and we are doing a lot of transformation in our people practices basis these insights. So I think that's what we are sensing now.
Wonderful. Abhishek, your take.
Quick one, Basuri. I think we keep on talking, but I think for the last 2.5 years as leader, we have been talking gray because the clarities are not there. Somewhere it is high time we talk about black and white. And in the black and white, I think somewhere I also think that we have been, talking about guidelines. Now it's high time we start drawing policies. That is something which is there for the future. And all these things would be leading to, because the future would be segmentation. Basuri, I mean, 100 years back, Spanish flu, 3 to 4 years, and the recency effect of COVID would be 2 to 3 years kind of thing. Nobody knows. But yes, somewhere for coming 2 to 3 years, segmentation would be reality of it. And the success of segmentation would be only on one pillar, fairness. Unless until we are fed in everything, treating employees category, talking about their work-life balance, productivity, and blah, 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 we'll only be successful if we'll be very fair. Then only we'll be able to take care of the coming 2 to 3 years kind of thing. And hopefully we'll start drawing policies sooner and moving out from guidelines. That's a quick one from my side.
Yeah, interesting that you talk of fairness, because there is a very interesting question that's been asked by someone, one of our participants, and anybody could take it. So this person asks, how does one keep fairness in compensation with respect to on-site allowances? So it's talking about metro, site-based, client location, which are not available to the employees that work from home. So any take on this? Any response, quick response to this?
I'm sure the nuance in IT would be very, very different, and Nanjappa would be able to really help.
Yeah.
But from a manufacturing standpoint, I think we have moved to one compensation across the country long back, because this pain point of where do we work from and what kind of money will I get, I think we wanted to really eliminate. And in terms of hiring strategy, if I'm giving advantage to employees to work from their native places, obviously we have looked at a slightly different compensation structure. But all existing employees, I think it's one compensation pan-India, or rather, that's a principle which we at least follow from a manufacturing standpoint.
Okay. Nanjappa, is it any different for?
No, so right now, early days.
Yeah.
Early days. We want to. I think most organizations want to wait and watch how this is going to pan out. Eventually, when it settles down, I think obviously some things will change. But having said that, there could be difference in compensation depending on which group of employees you belong to. Could be, but more than anything, the compensation and benefits part was anyway moving towards a more bespoke model. It was not about. I mean, that journey had already started in terms of having in most policies, people could pick and choose depending on what benefit that would suit them. You take insurance as an example. Most organizations had already started that, to say that initially it was just one size insurance fits all, and then we moved to saying the newbies versus how it be for women to family to something else. So the truth is, benefits will anyway move towards a segmented bespoke model. Policies and processes will also, like I said, that's why I said the quality of that experience and will kick in. Early days, some organizations have already started looking at some of these things, and here is where the whole co-creation will come into place, taking feedback from employees on what is valuable for them, in addition to flexibility, what else, and that's how some of these things will pan out.
Interesting. One question that is direct to you, Nanjappa. Great to hear about the culture, that the culture will be ground up. Do you have any specific example of this at Infosys, which you may have come across in the past 2 years? I think you did touch upon it, but I think a specific concrete example is what this participant of ours is seeking.
No, so when we survey, the second biggest reason why people come to work are teams. The first is, and the people they work with, the leaders they work with, the kind of support system, psychological safety, best friend at work, all of this. So teams are, in my view, across are underrated, and everyone wants to be part of that. So what we've seen is the bonding in the last 2 years within teams have increased, even though they have been remote, but there has been a sense of safety that within teams it has been good. But what has weakened, and this is across organizations, is the connect between teams, and that needs to enhance as we come back to work. And so how we've looked at it is to enable managers, to enable and give them tools and techniques, equal responsibility for employees, and that's how teams teams function within themselves, and making movement between teams easy as well. So these are some things that we've seen, but Eventually, satisfaction, pulse, feedback, all of that will be based on what experience an individual gets in teams, whether they are inside office or outside office.
Right. And we've come to the end of time. However, I cannot resist the temptation of asking just one more question on behalf of all our participants, a very interesting one. So somebody wanted to understand, how do you take care of your people functions well-being? So, I mean, the people in the people function, how do you take care of their well-being?
We are the biggest culprit on that account. And if you historically go through, even if you look at the training need identification, we keep on taking care of the organization, but if you look at our own teams, it will be the least.
Yeah.
So somewhere I think, yes, I think somewhere as a leader, we do have that onus of doing that we check, inquiry conversation. And that is why, Basri, this was one of the things we started, that every manager, including me and my teams, are supposed to do an inquiry conversation with their team members. So very pertinent one. And trust me, Basri, even after 4 years or 2 years, whenever we are going to catch up, our TNCI or people function will remain lowest, whatever said and done. Quick one from my side.
Absolutely. No, agree, Basuri, completely. I think while we have consciously tried to make an improvement, but I think we remain one of the most taken for granted group teams, and a lot needs to be done there. Absolutely in agreement with Abhishek.
I mean, it's a great time to thank all the HR folks across all organizations
Yes.
for coming,
Absolutely.
coming to the fore in the last 2 years. I mean, it's been very tough, both from an employee care and empathy point of view. And I think HR teams across all organizations have risen to the occasion, have been selfless, and gone the extra mile to make sure that the organization and the employee welfare has been on top priority. And I've seen this across real life examples, brutal, but they have come to the party. And I think we should thank the HR community for making this a reality and keeping the HR flag flying high. And a heartfelt thank you to each one of them.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, gentlemen. This was such a wonderful conversation. We received many registrations for this, but people who have joined, thank you very much for joining. And those who could not join today, we've recorded this conversation, and we are going to certainly share a link with all the participants so that they can, at their own convenient time, watch the entire conversation. A very good evening, rest of the evening to everybody. Thank you, Milind, Abhishek, and Nanjappa. It has really been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for participating and sharing your time with us. Time, thoughts, everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Bye.
Thanks.
Take care.
Very
See
good
you,
evening
Abhishek.
to
See you,
everybody.
Nanjappa. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.